Oh, 1 second. There it is. Just saying hello in YouTube chat. We are watching YouTube for questions. So if you are on YouTube, feel free to ask questions and we will try to catch those. And thank you again for joining us for another episode of SEO Fight Club. We don't have a specific topic today, so we're going to talk about recent news and any questions people have. Oh, 1 second. Got that playing in the background because I'm a professional. All right, so let's get started. Had to shut down the pre-show discussion because I thought it was too cool to not have on the regular show. So we're talking about the article where Google says we don't use user engagement as a search ranking factor. And I feel like, I've been in that camp for a while. Like if it was a factor, it was a very weak factor or a very temporary factor. And here they're saying it's not a factor at all. And I think there needs to be a distinction because there are two ways that I see it, like mechanically implemented in Google search itself. And you can't deny the existence of these mechanisms because you can see them in the source code. And if Google wasn't using it at all for anything, they wouldn't need these mechanisms in the source code. And so what I'm talking about is every single search result has a ping attribute. And that ping attribute, when you click those links in a modern browser, it will fire the ping attribute as a tracking request out of band. You won't see that in your normal browser view. It happens in the background so that Google gets logging data about your click. And that's what that ping attribute is. And they are very clearly measuring user engagement with the search results. So let there be no doubt, they absolutely, positively are measuring engagement of the organic search results. They cannot even claim otherwise because you can view source and see it happening. Now, this article, it's talking about it in general. And I think what some of the people are talking about is, well, what about the user engagement on my page? And there it's really, a very gray nebulous area because you have things like safe search where every URL you request gets viewed by Google, and they can see your entire click stream of all the different URLs you go to. So whether that's on Bing or whether that's logged into your bank account or any of those things, all that click stream data, every action you do, the fact that you are looking at puppy photos on Instagram, you logged into your bank, you went to your search on Bing, you went 5 pages deep, like all that information, because you use Chrome, all that information goes to that safe search API. So they definitely have mechanisms for capturing this data. Now they're saying we don't use it. They're not saying we don't capture it. They're saying we don't use it. And I think the context of what they're saying is they don't use it in terms of the engagement happening on your page. And I think if they said they were using it, there would probably be a lot of legal implications to them doing that, because probably no one on earth has authorized them to be analyzing their traffic like that. except for maybe the people who have put in Google Analytics, which they also state that they don't use. So that kind of brings us to the question, is there anything that users can do on your page to help it rank? So Lee, what do you think about this? I know you've tested traffic like an absolute ton.
Yeah, I think you've got a number of different issues here that we want to parse out. One is I can tell you from testing lots and lots of traffic, there's a lot of things that can be done with traffic in a lot of different environments. But moving organic rankings is the hardest. You can do things with videos, you can do things with local, but just the Google organic is really, really hard. But I think you're right. You can, if Google is testing different implementations of the algorithm, and they're tracking that, which clearly they are, so that they're showing in one set of results that they consider similar. They're A/B testing whether the appearance of a video carousel is a good thing or a bad thing. And the clicks that come or don't come as a result of that presentation, it doesn't matter whether individuals clicked on a particular website, your website, they're tracking whether or not the carousel impacted overall clicks to other things. So they can tune the algorithm without paying attention to the impact on your particular page. And that's an important distinction. So you've kind of made that there where you can absolutely track user data and have it not be relevant to the particular pages that the user interacted with, but very, very relevant to tuning the algorithm for user satisfaction. So I think that would be my guess in terms of how they're using it, the various presentations, the various factors that they want to tune. It would be very easy for AI to learn from coordinated experiments across the SERPs. And we see a lot of volatility in the SERPs. That would explain some of it.
And with the signals, I'm trying to imagine, what people would be trying to use. So if we went to a community like Signals Lab or something, and what do you think the average person in Signals Lab would be trying to do to their page to try to use engagement, whether it is a thing or not? How are people trying to use this?
Bounce rate, time on page, clicks to specific keyword searches. Those are all the common metrics that people are looking at, trying to manipulate anyway. I don't know if there are others. I mean, we've got a lot of smart SEOs here. There are others that we're missing, throw them in, but those are the ones that I see primarily that people try to tune for in terms of user engagement.
Yeah, I've written rather complicated bots in the past where I tried to manipulate different types of traffic and user engagement. And I've heard all of the theories about how you have to go through, different hardware identifiers so that you appear to be different devices, and you have to use all the different IP address rotation, and it can't be known proxies, and you have to maintain browser session states so that it actually looks like different users. You have to try different collections of logged in users versus anonymous. You have to do all the mouse movements and the scrolling and the linger time to read and the human emulation set of features. So I've written bots that do all of this and pilot actual rendering browsers, piloting Chrome, things of that nature. and I was never able to move the needle in organic rankings with that. The first time I ever saw rankings affected by CTR was your research, and that was phenomenal. But I've never been able to apply it to the organic. And so, have you ever had the needle move at all for organic?
In local, yes, but for non-local, it is difficult. I know that some other testing that's been done, if you have enough traffic to create what Google perceives to be a viral event, you can move things. And some of that testing I've seen done was Holly Stark's. She's got just server farms of bots and things like that she can test and do a lot of things. But you're talking about millions of visits in a short period of time, not something that your average purchaser of a bot or creator of a bot would be able to replicate. So it can be done at scale, but normally no. And I think that's sort of an indicator that in order to get it to move, it has to be on a massive scale. I think that's a little bit of a clue on how it's used or not used.
Yeah, Holly is in the YouTube audience today, Holly Starks, and she's done a lot of testing with traffic and CTR and things of this nature. And she says it depends on what you're trying to rank. Some things are way easier than others. And so that's interesting. I wonder if that means like the type of content or the more about the topic or niche of the keywords you're trying to influence. Like perhaps it's really hard to influence health related terms over, affiliate related terms, or video is easier to manipulate than blog posts. I'm not sure which she means by that, maybe both or maybe something else, but that's another dimension to the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, she agrees with what Lee is saying, that local is way easier. And that, yeah, national's very hard to move with CTR. And I largely only play in national, so I'm kind of weak on the local SEO compared to others. I tend to largely only play in the national playground. So yeah, this is really interesting to me. Now here's the question. Let's throw in a tangent. Does the CTR in the search results matter? So no longer talking about the engagement on your page, but the engagement with your search result in Google search. What do you think about that one?
Again, for me, it's been very, very limited, the impact on organic. Now there's some things that you can do a little bit, people have tested, like bouncing off your competitors' pages or things like that, but the moves tend to be small and they tend to be in less competitive markets. So if I'm trying to move something, for a plumber in Adams, Kentucky, it's a whole lot easier than the same thing in Louisville, Kentucky, for example.
Well, we just had the good fortune of having Holly join us on the Zoom call for the meeting. So Holly, what's your 2 cents on this topic?
Hey guys, I sound okay because I don't have my headphones in. Do I have a back noise or anything?
You sound fine. A little
okay.
Quiet.
Okay, I'll move it up to my mouth a little bit more, but that's the best I could do. So if you're trying to do CTR with national ranks, you're going to pull your hair out and you're going to need some hair plugs, and there's no point to do it. I mean, if you're in reputation management, that obviously works because you're sending traffic to the Web 2.0, Twitter, YouTube videos, and stuff like that. So I I base my CTR on what I try to rank for, right? I try to do things that is low-lying fruit, that's KGR, that's not high competition. YouTube videos, heavily YouTube videos, and things like that with like local GMBs. I mean, for me, I've seen if I can move a GMB, I can get the organic to move at the same time. But on a national level, there's no way that that I'm going to try to do CTR. I would do more things on a national level with like mass pages and trying to rank those mass pages. But it's at the end case, it's always going to be low-lying fruit for me. It's always going to be the under 1,000 searches a month keyword terms is what I'm going to try to focus on, because I don't want to have to try to work for 6 months to a year to just rank, say, for one term. I want all the other terms. So CTR can work if you have the right platforms, if you have the right keyword structures, if your title is in your keywords, if your your YouTube videos has your keywords in it, depending upon what linking you have. It's not just like CTR works and every single platform, and this is the exact way to do it. That's not real. Every platform, every niche has a different way to do CTR. And just because it works for me, say for, I do embarrassing niches, right? So like hemorrhoids is one that I do heavily in, because I can rank in it, because not a lot of people are doing affiliate for hemorrhoid stuff. I am. So I can rank easier for that type of stuff than I can rank for something that's on a more of a national level. But my keywords are still going to be low-lying fruit.
So Holly, just so people have an idea of the scale, how many servers do you have dedicated to CTR?
Currently, I have 1,000 servers that only do CTR. I mean, I have more than that doing other stuff, but my CTR servers are 1,000, and none of them run software on it. None of them run CTR Booster. I don't run Agency Assassin. It's something that we custom wrote. We just sort of got into the back end of a few programs, more or less.
Right. So if with 1,000 servers, firing away, you're saying don't even try for, national organic with CTR. I mean, that gives you an idea of the scale of it. I don't have anywhere near that scale to be able to move it. But if that kind of firepower can't move it, that to me is indicative of
it's not going to move at that point.
Right. I mean, like if I were to build, certain guest blogs, guest niche, that type of stuff, and blog posts, and maybe over time it might, but I'm not that type of person. I want to rank like within a few hours to a few days. And so I do it entirely different. I'm not going to compete with everyone else who wants to rank for like the keyword term, like CBD oil. I'd rather do CBD oil and pick every single city in that state and just do it on a local level.
Yeah. Have a lot of smaller fights you can win easily.
Right. I don't have patience for that. And I mean, like, I have a good, healthy budget, but I mean, for national ranks, like, people would have to pay, like, the server cost alone is $6,000 a month, right? So, like, if you're not paying me $12,000 to try to rank for your national term, which is not going to rank for 6 months, you're wasting time and I'm wasting time, and you're not going to be happy with me. But if you give me something that's local, then yeah, we can work with you and we'll rank you a lot quicker with CTR and other things. It's just not CTR. It's not just a push button and then go on with your day. Because as soon as you turn it off, it's going to drop. So if you don't have anything supporting the traffic or supporting that site or that page, it doesn't matter. It's going to drop off no matter how much CTR you set.
So we've been talking about engagement in terms of browser interactions, people using their mouse and keyboard within a web browser. What about engagement via devices? Does having engagement from a mobile phone or tablet, is that a different type of engagement, and does that help at all?
So it is, it's more of a trusted engagement. So let's say that you're doing GMBs and driving directions, putting it in your phone for the keyword driving there, doing things you would normally do on a cell phone, right? So you look at the images, you would maybe look at some reviews before you go and stuff like that, leaving reviews, that type of things helps on a mobile phone. I haven't had good luck with it on a desktop, so I don't do those type of things on desktops. I only do that on a mobile phone. If you're doing stuff with like YouTube videos, you don't have to have the cell phones. You can do the YouTube videos through a browser, because that's fine. It still shows as a view. Is it more trusted on a phone for YouTube? I don't think so. I have a hard time believing that. Plus you're going to have data issues. So I guess you sort of just has to think, what does Google see that end customer is going to be using, right? If you're doing TikTok, you're on a cell phone. If you're doing GMBs, driving, you're on a cell phone. You're doing podcasts, you're on a cell phone. So if you're doing website searching and browser searching for CBD oil and meth and how to sleep with CBD oil, you're probably going to be on a desktop. So I'm going to do searches like that on a desktop versus a mobile phone.
Interesting.
So yeah, the engagement piece, I mean, the thing that you're hearing consistently is that, local or video works differently than organic. And that I think is where I think Matt was the one that was asking the original question about how can Google not use, organic interactions as part of its ranking. And like, well, it's different. And I know Bing is the exact opposite. Bing has an algorithm for ranking pages, but they heavily rely on user metrics. So they're much more susceptible to manipulation from, CTR and other things like that, social signals, etc.
Well, I think Bing is like, they're always going to be a step behind on Google, right? So if it worked in Google 2 years ago, it's probably going to work on Bing now, right? So I've been doing cell phones for, I think, 2 years, maybe a year. I went from 100 to 700. So anyone who says a cell phone CTR doesn't work isn't doing it the right way. And that's the really big key, is that a lot of people so they've tried the driving directions, right? So they go to the business, or they go I know people who have gone an hour out and they get results, and sometimes they don't get results. Well, are you just sitting in one spot and you have 30 phones? 30 phones is too many, first off. And you know that because you look at the analytics in GMB, and you can see a certain amount of cell phones will only fire if you take 30 with you. So if only 12 are going to fire, then only take 15, because 3 of those are not going to fire, right? So you have to there's a lot of research involved in it. And it's not like just put all the keywords into your phone and then drive straight there, right? It's like go from my house to McDonald's to Walgreens. And the whole time I'm driving, I'm also typing in different phones. So, I have to have someone with me. It's not in one spot and then drive. It's like you drive and then you go like 2 miles and you pull over and you do another search, and you keep driving 2 miles, you pull over and do another search. So it's a lot of work, and it does not work if you don't do it the right way, because Google will know and they'll see it.
Yeah, if you get a chance ever to see Holly present on her research at a conference, I highly recommend you do. It's hilarious in that she talks about how the scale of doing like mobile device testing just becomes a fiasco. Just think for a minute, if you had a car full of cell phones and all of a sudden you get some type of alert on them, what it must be like in the car. Do you have any just short stories on your your execution of doing your research?
I mean, like, so, I mean, people have heard about the traffic jams that I mean, I can do a traffic jam 2 minutes after I leave my house. But the traffic jams only show up if you're on a posted speed road. So like if you're on a side road, even though we know side roads are 25 miles an hour, it doesn't show as a traffic jam until you turn onto a posted speed. So Google knows the posted speed and they know where your car is. And it actually does kind of work if you're doing walking. So if you're walking and you're clicking the driving directions, which I've done that too to see if there's a difference, it knows that you're walking. Or you could, I guess you could be in a really slow car, but it really knows that you're walking just because of where you are on the road and the sidewalk. I mean, I've been stopped 3 times. When I was in Florida, no, where was I? I was in Houston. I think I was in Houston, and a state patrol stopped me, and like we got drilled for almost an hour and a half about the hundreds of cell phones I had in the back seat, and they were all going off because like if you stop and you're like, you know, just right up to the stop sign, it'll continue to say turn right, turn right, turn right. So we have hundreds of phones saying turn right. So I mean, it was just terrible. But yeah, you kind of have to come up with a really good story if you get stopped. I mean, that's pretty, they see the phones in your back seat and they're going to stop you. So, you know, and then you have overheating problems if you have older phones, even newer phones, but you have overheating problems. So you can't just stick 100, even 10 phones, right? You can't stick 10 phones in a box and drive for an hour. It's going to overheat. And now it is that, so before it was overheating, it was fine because once you got there and it was done overheating, you would turn the phone back on and it would send the maps back up to Google and it would know that you arrived. So it was okay. But the last couple of weeks, you can't download a Google's map and then drive there and upload the data basically. You can't do that. So that's something that they have taken away. So now if your phone turns off in the middle of your drive, it doesn't actually know that you drove there. So you have to make sure that the phones don't overheat. So then you have to buy equipment for the phones not to overheat. And then if you're buying older phones, they're not going to hold the charge. So generally you can do like an hour to hour 15 minutes of driving before they shut off. I mean, it's not like, I mean, it's such a cluster when you go out and test and you have all these phones and they're all yelling at you because I didn't know I could mute them all at first. And then I didn't know that I was using Apple Maps versus Google Maps. So it would jump in Yelp, but then it didn't jump in Google. So if you wanted to do things like Yelp, you use the Apple map versus the Google map. So it depends on where you're trying to rank. I mean, there's so many variables. It's never, ever, ever the same thing, like ever.
Now, do you think that some of this can be like automated, you know, sending the digital signals of where you are in a journey, like using like a cloud device farm?
Yeah.
Or is that a total waste of time and effort?
So I know that there was just a course released last a week and a half about using devices and connecting to like mobile data and stuff like that. I haven't done enough testing to say that works. We have tried things with like Zendroid. It's a Zen poster for Androids, and we can get the driving directions to work and show up in GMB analytics. On a very small scale, I think it probably would work. For me, like, I know the cell phones in person work, so it's easy to sell. It's easy to sell that to a client if you have the backup proof. And the problem with the whole cell phone project is that you have to say, you know, I have people in New York that want me to come to New York. I enjoy traveling. So when I go to New York, I'm going to try to get 12 to 15 people. That easily can be a $30,000 weekend for me for just driving. And that's how much I charge for 15 companies, you know? So income wise, it's worth it. But it's a lot of traveling. And the mobile device farms, I just don't know enough that I can definitively say it's better than driving, because I don't think that is better than driving. I think it's at some point you're going to probably hit a roadblock and it's just not going to take effect anymore.
I know that Terry Power was thinking about working with device farms at one point. Did that ever happen, Terry?
Yeah, with device farms, you can log into actual phones, different places in the world. Meaning you can pick ones in the US or in Canada, if you're in Canada or your client is. You can go in there and as an Android phone, there's a piece of software called a GMS emulator, maybe that's the name of it, something like that, you could then put in a latitude and longitude, and that phone would then assume that position in the world as far as Google was concerned, do a search, find a particular client, and show user engagement for that, possibly a GMB, a video, things like that. You can't make that phone travel, although you could put it in airplane mode, something like that, and then change that location, but and then wake it back up. But the actual travel, going from a neighborhood to the pizza joint, you need an actual phone actually moving to do that. I don't know a way to emulate that with these device farms yet, but I did have a piece of software developed that would do the searching and engagement, and I thought it worked pretty well for videos, not as well for GMBs, and not at all for organics.
So that's good to know. So similar results.
Yeah, I think you're just limited. User engagement, Google takes into account Google takes it into account, user engagement, but not the same for everything, obviously, because I get personalized results and I know they're the result of my engagements with Google. So they do use it to some extent for some search rankings, but yeah, the device farms and Holly's actual phones both can do some of the same things, but not all of them, obviously, because you can't move those device farms around.
And so we've talked about 3 forms of engagement so far. So we talked about engagement on the page within a browser. We've talked about engagement with a page in the search results, and we've talked about engagement via devices. The last form of engagement I can think of is, what about engagement on other properties? What about people tweeting about your page, talking about your brand, linking to your page? Lee, what do you think about these off-page forms of engagement?
Backlinks are dead, Ted. Backlinks are dead. I think the link stuff is, clearly it's always been a foundational part of the algorithm. Exactly how they're using links changes a little bit over time. I know that Clint has done, a crap ton of testing, but I think he popped off of here today. But it's an important piece of it. At least the backlinks are. In terms of other user engagement with other properties you have, like with your particular Twitter feed or your particular, other things, I'm not sure. I'm not of a mind that works or doesn't work, because I haven't seen enough to make an informed decision on that.
Yeah, back when I was doing online retail, at that time, everybody suspected that Facebook likes were a signal, and I kind of got some notoriety in the various SEO groups for disagreeing with everyone on that. And the reason I disagreed is because I had more Facebook fans than the NFL. It was across about 30 properties, but combined it was more fans than the NFL. And we could not leverage likes to move the needle of a simple test page with a zero competition keyword. Like it was simply just like not a factor at that time. I haven't checked lately, but I would guess that things like Facebook likes are still not a factor. But there's this new growing body of evidence that things like tweeting URLs and YouTube uh, uh, link mentions and things like that have some effect. Are you seeing any of that?
Well, they're backlinks. I think Holly was jumping in on some of that as well, because I know she tests on Twitter and some other places.
Yeah, so like if we send like a link to Twitter or a link to a news page, we'll send traffic. We'll go to Google, we'll search for SEO show. We'll click on the website, whatever website we want to move up, or we'll click on the tiers, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. Click on it, and then we'll click on the property that is in that. So if you list, I probably totally did not say that the right way. If you list a link on YouTube going back to the page that you want to rank for, we basically will send traffic to that YouTube video and have it click on that.
Interesting. And that has had positive effects?
It has had okay effects. It hasn't gone backwards, but it has not moved up a heck of a lot. It kind of like you're creating a link farm, I guess, a little bit. I don't know if it's taking effect because we're sending traffic to the tier, or because we're sending traffic or referring traffic from a high authority page, or if that has nothing to do with it at all. I don't know.
I
It has a
remember.
little bit of effect, but I don't. We're running it on all our servers.
I remember back in the day when Google Plus was a thing, that it was one of the only social signals I could get to reliably pop in rankings. And its effects seemed to be temporary. So you'd get a bunch of Google Pluses and you'd be like a trending result. And then when the trend ended, you would kind of fall back down.
Right.
Do you think there might be effects involving, being a trending topic?
Yeah, so I can only say in the certain circumstances that we've done things like watch this stream online. So let's say we're saying watch the Super Bowl online. So what we did is we would create a video, we would blast it out to the news network, and then we would send traffic going to each of those embeds on the 1,000 servers, and it would create like a viral look, and then we could get it into top stories on Google. But once we stopped the traffic and there wasn't any more views, like 3 days later, generally 3 to 5 days, it wouldn't be in top stories anymore. So it's again, it always comes back to that supporting content and supporting traffic. As soon as you turn it off, it's going to drop if you don't have that. But we could get it in there. I just was, we just didn't continue with it just because we have several different projects.
Yeah, and that's the viral nature of, the number of servers that you have pinging that particular thing. So you can mass force something in temporarily.
Yeah, I think we probably at least had 6,000 hits every maybe 20 minutes. And so we definitely created a viral, like we could hit that top stories right away. But as soon as we turned it off, if that traffic wasn't there and people weren't searching for that topic, it wouldn't really matter.
Yeah, but it's not many people that can create 18 or 20,000 visits per hour.
Right. I mean, it's not right. That's the whole thing. It's not like sustainable. It's not.
Yeah.
It's better sustainable if you go and you pick the low lying fruit. You send the trickle of traffic, the backlinks, the embeds, whatever it is, and send that and rank over, a couple of weeks, and it will sustain. But we did the test. The tests work. It's just, I don't know.
So we have a question in YouTube for Holly. It looks like Charles Taylor would like some tips about getting included in top stories. You have any tips for him?
I mean, yeah, what we did is we posted out 1,000 blog posts to the news network. So basically that means that the network was approved in Google News. So Google thinks that it's a trending story because it has 1,000 places that posted the syndication, more or less. And then we sent all of the traffic to those random blog posts. We know what sites are strong and what sites are not strong. So like we have a Miami site that's really strong. So we would send a lot of the traffic to the Miami site to get that one into top stories. So I mean, it's easy to create. You just have to be able to create the viral traffic, but you're not going to be able to create the viral traffic if you are just sending like 100 people. It's not.
Yeah,
viral traffic's like a lot.
It's not enough to be an event.
Yeah, and we spent a lot of money doing the test. Did I make money, the same amount of money on it that I put in on that test? The only way we were going to get paid is an affiliate. So that you had to sign up for like Real Player or something. I don't even know what the offer was, something like that. How many people signed up for it? We got a lot of subscribers to our YouTube channel, so that worked. And over time, we might get the money back.
All right, so we're coming up on an hour. Let me ask Carolyn quickly, because I forgot to at the beginning of the show. What's going on with the podcast?
Hey, well, I think it's mostly going to be to publicly answer a lot of the questions I got about last week's fun about indexation. So I might break my cardinal rule of making an SEO podcast about SEO.
Excellent. And you do this podcast in seasons. And so where are we in the season? When does the season start and end?
Well, it started on January 1st. So we're now in the second season. And this upcoming one, I think, is going to be episode 11, season 2, episode 11.
Interesting. And you often survey and do questions of your audience. Are you planning to ever experiment with having guests on the show?
It's funny. I didn't, when I asked that question or implied that question on the survey, they wanted to know what people would say, but they didn't necessarily want interviews, which was interesting. So I don't know. I don't know about that. That's a good question.
All right. And if people want to ask you questions for your show, is there an easy place they can go to ask you questions?
Yeah, I'm thinking mostly the Facebook page for American Way Media, which is also, if you're on your phone, you can find the podcast there now. But yeah, this message through Facebook is great.
Awesome. And so, yeah, if you're looking for more SEO content to consume, check it out. It's Confessions of an SEO. You can search for it in Google. It ranks. It's also on every podcast platform out there, so you can pick the platform of your choice to listen to it. And it's one that I listen to regularly. I highly recommend it. It's a good SEO podcast. It really gets you thinking about issues in our industry. All right. With that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us, especially Holly Starks. Thank you for coming and sharing your information. That was really cool. And Lee, you have any final words on this topic?
No, I think the as with all things, one of the things you heard from all of us here is that there's been a lot of testing around this. It's not just an opinion based, user engagement, this or that. Where you kind of heard consistently from different people that video and local, it tends to work well in, organic not as well in, a lot of different methodologies, and so I think the Matt's original question was, to what degree does user engagement impact organic? And I think the tested data would say very little, unless you're willing to spend a crap ton for a server farm. And even then, it's worth it. So
yeah, I've never for national terms, I've never had any result that justified the expense. And so, that's a thing in SEO, is that there's a lot of techniques out there that work. And oftentimes when you hear an influencer talking about techniques that work, they either work or they most likely worked at one point in time. I don't believe most influencers are lying about things, but sometimes the world changes. And the thing you really have to consider as an SEO is it worth doing? Like, there are SEO techniques that work that I won't do because they ruin my profit margin. And so it might work and still not be worth doing. And so I think with all things in SEO, you have to consider the cost and hassle of doing it. And one thing Holly knows well is the costs of doing this stuff, because she takes it to a whole different level. She goes into cost brackets. I wouldn't even go into, being in a multi-million-dollar online retailer. That's a whole different level is what she's doing. And so her insights is to what doesn't work even when you apply that kind of scale. And that's really cool, because that really answers that question: does scale help with this type of problem? And sometimes that answer is no. And so I'm really glad to get that part of the story. So thank you again, Holly. I'll let you have the last goodbye.
Oh, you're gonna give me the last goodbye. All right. Also, Ted, check that link from Lee. Did you give him the link?
I didn't give him the link. I will give him the link after.
Okay, give him the link after and then explain to him. It might take a few hours to populate.
All right.
Oh, okay, I guess I'm in an experiment, which will be
Yeah,
cool.
you are.
All right, I love experiments.
Just everybody search for Ted Kabitis in yoga pants in about an hour.
Oh no, it's one of those events. Well, thank you, everyone. We will see you next time, and take care.
Bye-bye.